What if there was a joyful way of overcoming intrusive and negative thoughts? Have you ever felt troubled by thoughts which are kind of overly negative and thoughts which want you to do something compulsively and make you want to do things that are not helpful for you or for others? Thoughts that are harmful, thoughts that may want you to do things which you logically know they are just not the right thing to do. But something in you is like just pulling you, pushing you towards doing that again and again. Today I'm going to talk about one approach which was amazingly liberating for me, and whenever I have taught this to one of my students or mentees, they have had amazing effects too. And I think this is going to help you a lot. This is a much more effective way of dealing with negativity, self-sabotage, things which pull you down without realizing how they are draining your energy. But this one simple way can help you to easily let go of so many kinds of intrusive thoughts. I want to share with you one particular experience where this tangibly helped me so much. This was back in Bangalore when I lived in this city in South India. And the entire day, that day for some reason, I was just having a hard time with everything. I was just completely finding life meaningless and hopeless, and nothing is real anyway. Why am I even doing this? Why am I going through this life? Why should I even exist? And nothing could get me out of it. Later in the evening, I went to my father's healing center in Bangalore, and we were on the top floor of the building. It was about 5 or 6 floors high. And my brother called me out to say, hey, the full moon is here. Do you want to come and see? And he just, invited me so lovingly. I was like, okay, fine, I'll come. But the whole day I was like, oh, nothing has a point anyway. But okay, I'll come and check it out. And as soon as I opened the door and walked out, the beautiful cool breeze outside. It can be cool in Bangalore in the evenings. Usually South India is very hot, but Bangalore has a nice weather sometimes, perfect humidity, perfect warmth, perfect coolness, and that cool breeze that hit me, and I looked up and the bright full moon was right there. Just a little bit of a cloud around it, just to add extra mysticalness to it. And this sight, this beautiful sight, just captured me, and it made me feel so free from all these thoughts and ideas in my head which were running all day long with so much momentum I couldn't get out of it. And looking at the full moon just made me laugh out loud because of that. And I just laughed and laughed and laughed at the full moon. The moon and the mind are very related. You may have heard studies about this. The moon is the symbol for the mind because it is the reflection of the light of the sun that you're seeing as the moon, and the sun is the consciousness or true awareness being reflected back to us as our mind. And I just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed at this moon for hours. My brother really thought I was going crazy. And he still makes fun about that sometimes whenever the subject comes up. But it really freed me, that deep seeing of how free I am to laugh at my mind, to laugh at all these serious, heavy things, and be so childlike and free and light and unburdened by anything of this world. To see the light in my mind. What this does for you is actually helps you see enlightenment even in things which seem very heavy and difficult. Everything has the light in it. We just don't see it. We are kind of blinded by the filters of the mind. They are so thick and heavy that we barely see any light in it. Sometimes. But when you actually see the light in something, even in your anxiety, even in something that makes you sad or depressed, not saying don't do anything about it. I'm not saying don't solve those problems. It's important to be practical and balanced. So this is a disclaimer too. I'm not a doctor or psychologist. So if you need that kind of help, definitely get proper help, because there are times when you need a much more hands-on help. But as a spiritual awakening mentor who has gone through this journey myself, this is what I see in my own journey that can help others. So this actually came from experiences of liberation from me, when I saw that life is actually so free. And when I had these realizations that there's absolutely nothing to worry about, nothing to be attached to, because everything is somehow temporary, and nothing actually has inherent meaning other than the meaning we give to that. It just became so light and happy and open for me that I just started laughing at everything. I just started laughing and laughing and laughing. And it may have looked like I've gone crazy from the outside for a while, but I would look at just anything, even the most serious things that people were really stuck on, and there was a phase that I would laugh at that. I wouldn't care for a while if I offended anyone. I'm not asking you to do this. I'm getting to the point. This is like the backstory of how it worked. Oh, by the way, if you don't know who I am, if this is the first video you're watching of me, my name is Ranitcher. I'm a spiritual awakening mentor, and I went through disruptive spiritual awakening many times in my life. When it completely disrupted my life, it was very powerful. I went through lots of ups and downs, dark nights of the soul, and high amazing experiences, roller coaster rides, again and again, to integrate my awakening. And what I help people now, I worked with hundreds of people who are on the spiritual awakening path, to help them find and integrate their light deeper and deeper into all parts of their life. Okay, now that you know who I am, this was part of one of the disruptive spiritual awakening phases, where it was just so joyful, and at the same time I didn't care about anything. And this is how it started, but I'm going to talk about how to bring it into balance and more of an integrated approach, but understand the principle of how this started so you can apply this to yourself. So in that phase, I would just laugh at anything naturally. And I would look at somebody on the outside. If they were really deep in their own mind, I would laugh at that. Then I realized it's actually, I'm laughing at a reflection of my own mind. And then it became internal, that I'm laughing at my own attachments, my own suffering, at my own little eccentricities in my mind. And it was just a beautiful way of internalizing this behavior, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? And then I saw how it's all so deeply connected, that whatever appears in my consciousness, even though it is completely meaningfully there in that moment, and it's perfect, and it's synchronicity that it's there in my consciousness, at the same time, from another perspective, from the grand perspective where we are here just for a blink of an eye and everything is temporary, at the same time it was completely meaningless. And whenever I became too attached to something, whenever I started obsessing over something in my mind, something started to become more and more of a kind of a binding force for my awareness, which was trying to capture my awareness in a way, trying to kind of be obsessed about that one particular thing which doesn't really matter. Like as you can see now, my approach to it started turning into laughter. Earlier I was trying all these things, like analyzing that, is this really true? But it got me more into thought. Sometimes it would work, and then other approaches of like fighting it in a way of trying to kind of say the opposite of what it's coming. Like if there's a fear that's kind of bothering me so much, I'm like, oh no, that's not going to happen, I'm completely safe and all that. It also works, nothing wrong with that. If it's working for you, do it. But I would also go into this kind of like force against force, and it's coming with all these negative force. I'm trying to muster up all my positive force and it would turn into a war. And then what happened when I discovered this beautiful approach, I just started laughing at it, and it disarmed the whole thing. It took the power away of whatever this insurmountable energy was which was trying to capture me. I was like, laughed at it. I stood there and had belly laughter, which is coming out because I've been doing this for so long, for years, that it's become a response in my way of being, that if I see something in my mind getting stuck, I just laugh at it. And I invite you to do that. As soon as you laugh at something, you take its power away. You make it so light. Even when it's something so heavy, you come back to love when you laugh. You can come back to your natural state, because what used to be so heavy in your consciousness now is seen as something that's easy to laugh at. You may not find it easy in the beginning to laugh at things which are serious in your life. But when you say, I have to laugh at this, it forces you to look at it from a bigger perspective, where this is small and insignificant. And you suddenly see it from a perspective where it is resolvable, solvable, let goable. I think it's Albert Einstein that said, problems cannot be solved at the same level that they were created, or same perspective they were created. That's so true. If you have a fear or attachment from a certain perspective in your being, we are multidimensional beings. We have multiple aspects or parts, and there are parts which are kind of very attached to something because of something that happened in your life. You developed a kind of defense system to protect yourself against some trauma, and that aspect or part of you is so attached to that way of responding to some stimuli in your life. For example, if you're in a social situation, you may have some anxiety around that. Oh, how do I talk to people? What will they think? Etc. etc. And for that particular part of your being, that aspect of your being, it's so real. So it thinks this is the only way to respond, and it's stuck with that. And if you are pulled into that, you just take on that part as your being. You see from that perspective, and you don't see anything else. And it doesn't help you. It's not free. You're bound to that. But when you say, oh, I have to laugh at this, for me it happened naturally, but then I made it a practice. Even when it didn't come naturally, I was like, how do I laugh at this thing? Right? And then I found a way, because I have to look at this in a way where it's not so serious. I have a practice that I teach in my mentorship called sacred silliness. Sacred silliness. So how do you look at that as something silly? Because anything can be looked at as something silly, even the most serious, grave and very important things. There is a perspective from which it is silly. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm not saying it's something that shouldn't be looked at sincerely, seriously. You can, but find a way to look at it in a way that it's so insignificant too, so that you are able to consider different perspectives. This is how you bring balance, not just by laughing at it. That's not the only response. But you cultivate the ability to also look at it from that grander, greater perspective where everything is small and insignificant. Makes sense? And then, once you are able to be free of it, to see it from one perspective of laughter and silliness, then you can shift your perspective. Let me look at it from a different way, from a problem-solving perspective, from a perspective of compassion, perspective of love, or from the perspective of all the skills and roles you have developed in your human life, where you're like, okay, what skillful means do I use to solve this problem now? Because now you're out of that bound kind of perspective where you have to look at it from that fearful way or anxious way. Right? Now you're free. And if you learn to make this one of your responses in your being, it frees you so much. There was this time that I was mentoring somebody informally, and this was several years ago, before I became a formal mentor, that somebody was going through a really hard time, and they had spoken about this problem in their life so many times, and it was something deep and personal, and they were very troubled by that. And I had spoken to them about this many times through a different perspective, and no matter how many times we've addressed this, they came back to the same issue. Have you found something in your own self which does that? Even though you've spoken about it logically, you considered it, it's not actually a problem, it's only my perception, this and that. You realize that, but again and again you come back to the same damn perspective. You cannot let it go. So something deep within me after many talks about this, I didn't even think about this, or it didn't come from over here, but something in me just started laughing at that in a very loving way. It was not mockery, it was not like I'm going to laugh at your problems, but it was a very freeing laughter. As I spoke about this, I just laughed and laughed in very genuine laughter. And I laughed so much. First, the person started getting pissed off. And then they saw there's something about this laughter which is not the kind of normal mockery laughter. And then they started seeing that perspective too. They first started smiling at their own problem, and then they started laughing with me. I was laughing like really hard. I was belly laughter kind of laughing. And we just ended up laughing and laughing and laughing together about this. And then they realized how silly this was from this greater perspective, and that helped them completely open up and see this problem in a whole new fresh way. And they had realizations about that because they were able to let go of that bound perspective. Now they could see it from a curious and free way, and it was all okay. So I invite you, bring laughter into your life. There's nothing so serious that it cannot be seen as silly. Remember this. Remember that you are the creator, and this life you are going through is your creation. It's here to serve you. It is Maya. This grand illusion where everything is so dreamlike. When you take something to be heavy and real and very serious, because you believe it to be so, it appears to be so more and more. You give your power to it. So as the creator, shift from being so attached to that in that way to a place of freedom, laughter, sacred silliness, as I call it. And from that place, experience your sovereignty. Experience your freedom. Experience how this too shall pass. And it's not so much of a big deal as you thought or believed. Practice this every day. Make this a response in your nervous system. This may help you to become free of your own heaviness. So it's important to have balance. It's important to get out of this heaviness, see it in a light-hearted way, and then you can consider other perspectives of that. One of the teachings I give to my students is what I call the ministers in your mind, where you learn to see from the perspective of these other aspects of your being, which can be really helpful. So, yeah, become free of it, see it from a light-hearted place, and then, flow with it. You were stuck earlier in a certain place, now you can flow. Now you can do what is necessary, you can resolve it. One joke I want to tell you, which I love so much. Why are angels able to fly? because they take themselves lightly. If all this is resonating with you and you would like to go deeper, to integrate your spiritual awakening, to find your enlightenment, I invite you to check out my mentorship and my beautiful, loving community of awakening souls, where you have all the support, all the teachings, all the tools to go through this amazing journey of self-discovery, to find your enlightenment within. I invite you to check that out. The link is in the description or in the comments. I hope to see you there. I'm happy to offer you a free spiritual awakening assessment. Either I myself or one of my team members will be happy to assist you and see what is the right next step for you on the path. So if you want to look at another way of doing this, there's another response that I teach, and I've made a whole video about that, and it works with this kind of response very well. And between the two, these were the two most used responses that I developed to help me become more and more free. So you can go watch that video right here to help you deepen your practice. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Namaste. Bye bye.